Next question that we have comes from SBJ. Question is, how much of last year's defensive struggles were due to players versus scheme? I was expecting a lot more given Lanning and what I perceived to be a talented group. What can we expect in terms of defensive dominance going into this next year? Yeah, this is a really interesting question because it's one that I think came up throughout the season while we were watching things unfold in real time from a week-to-week basis. And then we also see it going into spring ball, which we're in now, going into next season, because that was one of the biggest storylines of last season. One of the biggest takeaways for Oregon football last season is, man, what the heck happened with that defense? I think a lot of Oregon fans found themselves asking, we got Dan Lanning. He just won a national championship at Georgia. We got Tosh Lupoi. He's a big name in college football. He's an elite. Both of those guys are elite recruiters. We got Noah Sewell. We got Justin Flo. Gonzo comes over. DJ Johnson, full-time defense. And then you get to the end of the season and you're kind of just left asking yourself, that was the defense? That was the best that Oregon could do? And it's interesting because Oregon's run defense, for as bad as their passing defense was, Oregon's run defense was really, really good. So if we're looking at next year's defensive dominance, you get back almost every defensive lineman. You only lose Jordan Riley from last year. Casey Rogers is back. Popo Amavai is back. Brandon Dorless is back. You got to mention him, obviously. Keon Ware-Hudson's back. You bring in Jordan Birch, the 6'6", 275 South Carolina transfer on the edge. Mace Funa is back. And I think that it's not hard to see Oregon's run defense being elite, being one of those better defenses in the Pac-12 in the West Coast, maybe even nationally. But where the questions come in is that pass defense. There were a lot of times when quarterbacks were targeting someone not named Christian Gonzalez, there wasn't a whole lot that Oregon had to show for it. There were safeties that were getting burned deep. That happened, numerous times. So I really feel like last year's defensive struggles were a blend of scheme and players. Let's start with the scheme, right? You have to look at the defensive coordinators that Oregon has had over, the past couple of years. You had Andy Avalos, you had Tim DeRuyter, and then you had Tosh Lupoi. You need some consistency, or you ideally want some consistency in the defensive scheme, which is why I think that Oregon should be able to take things, up a notch, especially in the pass defense next year, because you're not implementing a whole bunch of new changes. Sure, you have new guys coming in. You have Chris Hampton coming in to coach the safeties. You have Brian Michalowski working with the inside linebackers. And I think that just because you're adding those new guys doesn't mean that the scheme has to change a whole lot. I would definitely think that Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi and the rest of that staff got together and they're saying, hey, this is what worked last year. Let's keep doing it. This is what didn't work last year. This is what we need to change. And part of that is going to be the personnel. That's why they went out into the transfer portal and, added guys like Kyrie Jackson. They added guys like Justin Jacobs, Jordan Birch, Evan Williams, Tysheem Johnson. They went out there because maybe they went after those guys because maybe to a degree, that's a reality of any college football program. Not every guy that you have is someone that, fits what you want to do, that fits your vision for your team. And that's something that I think has definitely been downplayed with Dan Lanning having his first year under his belt at Oregon is, that's just the reality. You get hired and you got to work with what you have as a coach. You have to work with the players on your roster. But we've seen a major overhaul of this roster in the offseason with, I believe it was 26 newcomers in spring football. So they're bringing in guys that are going to help, I think, them do what they want defensively a little bit more. You saw them add a bunch of really talented corners in this class, right? You got Dalen Austin, Roderick Pleasant, Solomon Davis, Jonathan Gill, Cole Martin, who's already there. I think that it's a combination of Oregon's defensive struggles being the scheme and, needing to make some tweaks. I know a lot of Oregon fans get upset by seeing corners or defensive backs play very far off of wide receivers and tight ends. A lot of fans would prefer getting up in their grill, playing physical. So that's something that I bet is going to need to be addressed and changed to a degree. And then kind of like I said, with the cornerback room, I really don't feel like that many people have, locked down jobs, not because they aren't good players, but just because no one other than Christian Gonzalez is playing at such a undeniable level where it's like, oh, you for sure have your spot locked down. Because that's what you have to do as a head coach, even as a position coach. I feel like I've heard coaches say, maybe it was, I don't know if it was Dion, but coaches are recruiting guys to take people's jobs. That's their whole, that's a huge part of the recruiting process is you want to bring in guys that are going to push the people you already have on the roster and sometimes take your job. So I think that lack of scheme continuity, lack of a pass rush, you only had one reliable cornerback, safety play was lacking, there was poor tackling. So there was a lot of things that went into this, but now I feel like you have, Lanning and Lapoy getting their guys into the defense. I'm not saying that's the only factor here, but that's something that is going to probably help Oregon at least get more comfortable. You bring in Connor Soley too. He's an inside linebacker from Arizona State that I think can really help cover, especially with Justin Jacobs along there as well. So I think as frustrating as it was at times to watch Oregon's defense last year, it's hard to pin it on just the players or just the scheme because I really do feel like it was a combo of the two. Let's see here. Well, we're still rolling here. We just hit a half hour on the Ducks Dish podcast. Wanted to just take a second to welcome you into the show. If you guys are just joining us here on YouTube or Twitter, excited to have you along. Do me a favor and just hit the like and subscribe buttons for me. It only takes a second out of your day, and it is a tremendous help with what I'm doing covering the Oregon Ducks. Really greatly appreciate your support. Never want to ask for that too much, and I honestly hate that part of the show. But this is a free show. This is a free YouTube channel. So if you guys can just take a second out of your day to support me in those ways, I greatly appreciate it. All right. So moving on to our next question of the Mailbag podcast. It comes from Extraterrestrial. Question is, why no more incoming inside linebackers? Yeah, inside linebacker is a position that Oregon did not really attack super heavily in the 2023 class. And I think from a numbers standpoint, it kind of came up short from kind of what I was expecting. They did sign one true linebacker from the high school ranks. That's Jerry Mixon out of Sacred Heart Cathedral in the San Francisco Bay Area. He's super versatile. He's super versatile and athletic. I mean, he was playing linebacker. He was coming off the edge, putting his hand in the dirt if he needed to, playing running back, playing quarterback. This is a guy who did anything and everything that his team asked of him. And he was one of the best players in the WCAL, the West Catholic Athletic League, which is the league that I played in when I was in high school. But I know that he's going to be enrolling and joining the Ducks for spring practice. He's the only true linebacker from the high school ranks, but you also bring in Justin Jacobs and Connor Soley. But maybe the conversation should be a little bit more about the guys that Oregon does have returning, right? You have Keith Brown coming back from a year ago. He was playing some really good football towards the end of the season, especially in the Holiday Bowl and that win over North Carolina. And then you have Jeffrey Bassa coming back. He's another talented guy that I think is probably feeling really comfortable at that linebacker spot after playing his second full season there after being a converted safety. And then you also have some of the young guys that I think this coaching staff is really excited about. You have Harrison Taggart, who comes out of the state of Utah. He's really been lauded for his athleticism and his speed, just the way that he can move. Maybe he's a little bit undersized. I think he was listed last year at like 6'1", 6'2", 210, 215, as was Devin Jackson, the other young linebacker in that inside linebacker room. But those are guys that the staff is really excited about that didn't really see the field a whole lot last year. I think that the room was deeper last year, right? With Noah Sewell obviously being your main guy there. But even with that being the case, it was another position group that didn't hit the mark that Oregon needed it to hit for the 2022 season to be a successful one in the eyes of the defensive staff. So I think that this room is probably a group that is entering spring ball and entering the 2023 season with a chip on their shoulder. I think that there's probably some Oregon fans out there that are saying, "Oh, Noah Sewell's not there. Well, what are we going to do now?" And credit Noah Sewell for a strong Oregon career, but he definitely regressed from 2022 to 2023, which I think was a shock to see for a lot of Oregon fans. So maybe you enter the 2023 season with a bit of a clean slate, just looking for a fresh start. And it's good that you have some pieces that are there that have played some football for you. Jeffrey Bossa being the main one, Keith Brown, a guy who definitely saw his role expand in 2022, and then bringing in a guy with a lot of upside and a pretty strong history with Justin Jacobs. He got injured last year, so he wasn't able to play as much as he was hoping to. But he should be a guy that's viewed as probably a plug and play guy, or at least someone who's going to be in that rotation for Oregon at inside linebacker. So I totally agree with the question, kind of implying that they didn't sign enough inside linebackers, but the talent's there. And kind of like I was saying earlier on in the show, you got to work with what you got. Maybe the Ducks try to add some more pieces when the transfer portal window opens again in May, but I don't think that group is looking as unsure as it maybe looked earlier on this offseason. I feel like it's a group that's definitely got some talent, and we're going to have to see what that group can do because they're going to play a big role in next season's success.